Hey folks, my name is Jeff Gothelf. Thanks for joining. If you don't know anything about me, I've been working professionally for 25 years at this point, which is a long time. It's a big number to say out loud. Scary, actually, to say out loud. In that time, uh, I've seen tremendous transformation with digital products and services. I feel like I've worked on a little bit of everything over the years. I've been an information architect, I've been a designer, I've been a product manager, I've been a design team leader, I've been a product team leader, I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a solopreneur, um, an author, a speaker, a coach, and a consultant. And these days, I'm an entrepreneur once again with my longtime business partner and co-author Josh Seiden, building scaling our training business called Sense and Respond Learning. And over the years, the work that we've done has always focused on customer centricity, right? If you look at all the material that we've put out over the years, from Lean UX to Sense and Respond to the latest book on objectives and key results, this book here, you can't see it because of the stupid blurring, who does what by how much. The theme in all of this has been customer centricity, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. And so, it's asking me to confirm my speaking language. Sadly, it's not Ukrainian. I don't speak Ukrainian, but someday, perhaps. Let me share my screen with you and very good. Okay, so look, what I'm going to talk about is exactly this very thing. This thing that is, what roles do OKRs, objectives and key results, play in addressing customer needs? If you know anything about objectives and key results, if you've read any of the material or the books or the trainings that are out there, most of it doesn't necessarily speak directly to customer needs as being a clear and critical part of objectives and key results. If you read Measure What Matters by John Doerr, you'll read about incredible stories from his incredible career and all the fascinating things that he's seen and done, and how objectives and key results came about from Andy Grove and measuring by objective. But you don't hear him take a clear customer-centric point of view on that, a strong opinion. And that's true of most of the OKR material until you get to about Christina Whitkey with Radical Focus. And Christina is a friend who I've known for a long time. And her work started to talk about objectives and key results in a customer-centric way, primarily at the startup and the single team level. The second version of Radical Focus has increased from that. And so Josh and I saw an opportunity to have a broader conversation about objectives and key results, practically and tactically, across all of the all roles in all companies, with a very heavy customer-centric lens. And so that's what this conversation is about today, is looking at OKRs, looking at customer centricity, and trying to figure out what the two things have to do with each other. Now, look, in our new book, in this book, Who Does What by How Much, there's a case study. It's the opening case study in the book about a shoe company. And we did some work with this shoe company. And what was interesting about the conversation that we had with them is when we worked with the digital team, we worked with the shoe designers, we worked with the manufacturers, we worked with the folks who opened up the actual stores in the real world. And we asked everyone who participated in the OKR work that we did with them, who their customer was, right? And for the people in the organization who were dealing directly with the end customer, the shoe buyer, if you will, it was an easy answer. But for those people who were not dealing with the end consumer, the question became actually pretty difficult, right? The shoe company employs a shoe designer, right? The person who designs the shoes. Who is that person's customer? Right. The interesting thing is that they think about the shoe buyers as their customer, but the reality is the customer for the shoe designer is the person who consumes the design that they make. And so for them, It's the buyer, the person who buys supplies and materials to produce the shoes. It's the merchandiser who puts the shoes on display. It's the marketer who builds campaigns for the shoes. And it's likely the finance team that has to build a business model around each of these shoe designs. And the work that the shoe designer produces needs to make those folks more successful, right? And those are directly the shoe designer's customers. There are lots of folks between the designer and the actual shoe buyer. The next folks are the buyer, the merchandiser, the marketer, the finance team. So everything that that shoe designer does needs to make those folks more successful first. And the interesting question that we posed to the shoe designer in this particular case was, what will those people, the marketer, the merchandiser, the finance team, the buyer, what will those people be doing differently if you create a deliverable that helps them, right? If the output that you produce makes them more successful, how will you know? What are the behavior changes that you're looking for in those folks? And that was a really interesting conversation for that person because they'd never thought about their work that way. As far as they were concerned, the work that they were thinking about, the way that they were thinking about their work was, I produce a design and I give it to this person. And then a bunch of stuff happens, but they never thought about optimizing that interaction between that person and themselves. Right. And this went on and on through the shoe company. Another interesting conversation we had was the retail location manager, right? The person who manages the store where the shoes are sold. You know, who is their customer and how do they serve them and how do they make that experience better? And we had all these different conversations with folks who were thinking solely about what it is that they create at work and not necessarily about the next person in the value chain as their customer. And one of the key ideas in the conversation that we have in who does what by how much is this idea that everyone has a customer, right? And again, it's if you work in B2C and you know who your end consumer is, the person who pays you money for the thing that you make, that's an easy statement. That's an obvious statement, right? Everyone has a customer. That's obvious. But if you make products for a vendor that supports your organization, that's your customer. If you work in a B2B situation, you've got the person at your client that buys the product. You've got the person at your client that uses the product or does whatever with the product. Those are your customers. Maybe you make stuff for people that you work with, right? Internal colleagues, other teams, etc. Those internal colleagues are your customers. They're the people who consume the thing that you make at work. And that is something that I think a lot of folks don't really realize or don't think about that way, right? A really interesting example, I think, is this idea of human resources, right? Human resources probably don't think about having customers, but the reality is that human resources professionals, their customers are the staff of the organization. And the output that human resources creates should, in theory, make the staff more successful, right? Things like vacation policy comes from human resources. Performance management comes from human resources. Career paths come from human resources. And oftentimes we just kind of put this stuff out there into the world and we hope that people will take the right amount of vacation, that they will perform better at their job, that they have a clear sense of where they're progressing with their career. But we never really ask the question ahead of time in these situations. What will people be doing differently if I create a better vacation policy? If I create a better performance management metric? If I create more effective career paths? Right? This is the thing that we have to start to think about. We go to work every day and we make stuff. Sometimes that stuff is consumed by the customers of our company, and sometimes the stuff that we make is consumed by other people. Those other people are our customers, and we have to make them more successful. On the technical side of things too, this is an issue, right? The platform team or the API team supports internal teams with services and data and security and whatever else. Their customers are the other internal product teams who use that API to build on top of and then eventually deploy to market, right? So the creation of these APIs should make those product teams more successful, right? They are the customers of that. They are the humans that are part of this value chain. And so this idea of goal setting with a customer-centric lens takes into account that there is a human consuming the thing that you make at work every day. And our goal is to make those humans more successful, right? The problem, one of the biggest problems with this idea is humans, right? Humans are weird. They're complex. People do strange things, right? And they don't always do the things that we expect them to do. And they don't always do the thing that we expect them to do with the products and the services that we make for them. And just because we've figured out that they're doing something today doesn't mean that they'll be doing it in the future. They may take the products and services and the output that we create for them and do things that we never expected with those things. And so it's our job to make sure that we understand the problem that we're solving for our customers, right, in that very broad definition of the word, and that we continue to solve that problem for them continuously over time. Because ultimately, our customers, the people that we serve, they don't need a product, they don't need a feature, they don't need a policy or a campaign. They need to achieve a goal, right? They're trying to actually, be more successful at work, right? They don't need to integrate a calendar into their application, right? What they need is to never miss another meeting, right? What's the goal that our customers are trying to achieve? You think about the shoe designer, right? What's the finance person trying to achieve with the output from the shoe designer? They're trying to create a more accurate budget, right? How do I make that easier for them to achieve? And yet, in almost all of the organizations that I work with and that I've worked in over the years, the traditional way of measuring success and rewarding success is the production of a thing. So rather than measuring whether or not we made our customers more successful, right? We measure whether or not we made a thing, right? Did you make the Sharpie? Yeah, I did. The marker, there it is. I did it, right? And what we call that output, right? That's the making of stuff. And the reason why it's easy to measure output is because it's binary, right? You can say, I made the thing, there it is, or I didn't make the thing, right? It's a 1 or a 0. When you're measuring customer value, did I make the right thing for the right customer in the right way? It becomes more difficult to measure. And so instead of measuring output, if we want to truly measure whether or not we've actually delivered customer value, we have to use outcomes, this idea of outcomes. That's how we know that customers have achieved their goals. Now, to be very, very clear about it, outcomes are a measurable change in human behavior that drives business results, right? So we made a thing, we put it out into the world. Now, what are people doing differently with that thing, right? What is the measurable change in their behavior that tells us that we've delivered something of value that's going to make them successful and it's going to make our business more successful as well? And the nice thing about outcomes is that you've written an outcome statement when it answers the question, who does what by how much? This is the value equation. It's the reason why the book has the title, because this is how we've been teaching this for years, right? Every time that you set a goal, and if you're going to use an outcome, a customer-centric or human-centric outcome as the goal, it should answer the question, who does what by how much? Who's the human? What behavior are they doing? And how much are they doing that behavior by? More or less? That's what we're looking for. And so the first test of whether or not you are setting goals that are human-centric and customer-centric and focus on outcomes is, can your goal statement identify who does what by how much very, very clearly? And by using outcomes, we can then tell whether or not we've actually delivered something of value, right? People are behaving differently in a way that demonstrates that we have solved the problem for them, or in a way that demonstrates that we haven't solved the problem for them. So that's very important when it comes to outcomes. The other thing that outcomes really help us with is telling us when we're done. The interesting thing about producing output is the definition of done is works as designed, right? Produced and works as designed. I made a thing and there it is. But for the majority of us who work on digital products and services, and for all of us who work in this world of continuous change and optimization and learning and changing consumer patterns, we could potentially optimize the products and services that we make forever. How do we know that we're done? How do we know that we've achieved our goals? We know we're done when we've changed customer behavior enough, right? We get to decide what enough is, but at some point, the return on investment of trying to optimize an interaction to drive more behavior change isn't worth the investment. And so we've changed behavior enough, because without that, we could literally optimize our products and services forever, right? And that's a really interesting challenge, especially for specific features. The question, the magic question that we want to ask about every bit of work that we produce is this: what will people be doing differently if we solve their problems, right? If we make them more successful, what will they be doing differently from what they're doing today? And that is where OKRs come in, because OKRs can help connect the needs of the customer with the needs of the business. If we make the customer more successful, the business becomes more successful. So OKRs can be a few different things. They can be a goal-setting framework, they can be a new way of working, and they can certainly be a cultural intervention, a change in the way that the organization functions. I'm going to focus primarily on the goal-setting framework aspect of this for the purpose of this presentation. And so if we think about a brief definition, right? OKRs is a goal-setting framework for teams, not for individuals, but for teams that define a qualitative goal, the future customer benefit we'd like to create. And we measure success in terms of specific outcomes, right? What we expect to happen in the world, instead of measuring the completion of tasks or the production of work, right? Which is the traditional way of measuring success and setting goals. And so if we think about breaking this down a little bit further, we look at this: how to write good objectives, right? The objective statement is our high-level goal or intention. It is a qualitative statement. So you're going to hear a lot of superlatives like the best, the easiest, the simplest, the most compelling, right? It should be inspirational and aspirational. This is the why behind the work. This is why we go to work every day, right? And it should describe the future state or the benefit we want to create for our customers, right? The easiest way to shop for furniture online with a mobile device, right? That's the future state or the benefit, whatever it is, right? The simplest way to apply for a mortgage online, right? The most accurate way to estimate your tax bill, whatever it is. We're looking for that kind of future state or benefit. It should support the higher purpose of the organization, and ideally it is time-bound. We want to get this done by a particular point in time. So objectives are the qualitative side of the conversation. Key results are the quantitative side of the conversations, right? So these are metrics. They should be quantifiable. Ideally, it's a ratio or a rate: 25% more of this, 30% less of that, etc. Your key results should be aggressive. We shouldn't be crushing our key results every quarter. If you crush your key results every quarter, you're probably not trying hard enough. Your key results should be verifiable with evidence. We should be able to look at reporting and analytics and research to tell us that the numbers are right. And most importantly, so important that I underlined it in red, and the thing that makes OKRs different, powerful, and difficult is that your key results must be outcomes. They must be meaningful changes in human behavior that drive business results. This is where this gets interesting, where this becomes different and it becomes powerful, but also difficult because there's something clearly missing from our goal statements, right? Traditionally, we set goals in terms of the production of stuff. You'll notice that in my description of objectives and key results, I didn't talk about solutions or features, campaigns, policies or tasks, activities, output of any kind, right? None of that stuff is in our goal statements, right? Instead, right? Instead of saying we will build X, we will build Y, we're framing our goals in terms of user needs, in terms of customer needs or human needs in this particular case. Let me show you an example. Let's make this real. It's a lot of sort of meta level stuff. Let's get specific. Here's an example user need, okay? We receive a large amount of customer support emails on a daily basis. Nearly 80% of those messages inquire about password retrieval and require an identical response. If we could automate only these emails, our support staff could spend more time answering the 20% of support requests that fall outside of this theme, right? That's a business problem that we have to solve, right? If we were to solve this problem, right, we would set goals. We could set goals with objectives and key results that look like this, right? This is not the only way to solve for this, but it could look like this. The objective could be provide the most accurate and responsive customer support for all our customers, regardless of request, by the end of the year. So let's look at the list of objectives, right? Objective qualities, right? It's qualitative, right? Most accurate and responsive. Okay, that sounds nice, but realistically, it's a qualitative description. Inspirational and aspirational, absolutely, right? Defines a future customer state or benefit. Yes, we're going to have the most accurate and the most responsive customer support for all our customers. It provides clear value and it is time boxed. We want to get this done by the end of the year. So our objective at least ticks all the boxes. How do we know? How do we know that we've achieved this objective? What will people be doing differently? Well, 90% of customer support time is spent on issues not related to password retrieval. Okay. 75% reduction in customer support time spent on password retrieval issues. And what you'll notice here, right, is that the goal statement speaks directly to the value equation, right? Who does what by how much? Who? Customer support, those are the people, right? What are they doing? They're spending time on issues not related to password retrieval, right? By how much? 90% of their time. And you'll notice that nothing in here talks about how we might solve this problem, right? The team is now left to figure out, to discover, to research, to experiment, to design, to validate, etc. What combination of features, implementation models, policies, incentives, whatever it is, will drive the behavior that we have decided is our measure of success, right? 90% of customer support time is spent on issues not related to password retrieval. That's the goal, right? How we get there is up to the team to figure out, right? The team has to ask the question, well, what might we implement to achieve these OKRs? And there's lots and lots of stuff that you could do for this example, right? Improve the password retrieval process, remove the need for passwords, automate responses to password retrieval issues with AI, right? There's a million ways to do this, right? Which idea is best? And the reality is that we don't know, right? The best idea is the one that helps us achieve our OKRs. That's the best idea, right? The best idea is the one that makes a meaningful impact on customer behavior. And we have to go out into the world and discover what that idea is. I want to drive this home a little bit with an example, and I'd love to do this a bit more interactively in the Zoom chat. I see that there's some some comments in the chat, but I wanted to have you folks interact with me a little bit in this exercise called the mattress store in the chat. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and if you could answer them one at a time in the chat, that would be great, and make this a bit more interactive. So let's imagine for a second that all of us have a new job, and our new job is that we are the proud owners of a mattress store, brick and mortar, a store in the mall, on the high street, wherever it is, right? You sell mattresses. That's your new job. Congratulations, by the way. In fact, I have a photo of your mattress store. There's your mattress store. That's where you work now. As the owner of the mattress store, what is what are the high-level metrics that you're measuring to determine the health of your business? We call those impact metrics, right? At the highest level, as the owner of the mattress store, what do you care about? What are you measuring when it comes to the health of your business? Can you add some stuff in the chat that you might measure to measure the health of your mattress store? Customer satisfaction, yes. Money, profit, sales, returns, deals per week, profit per hour, revenue. Yes, I love all this stuff. Perfect. Number of mattresses sold per month, quality, reviews, footfall. Very good. Excellent. Thank you. Amazing. So at the highest level, right, like any business, we care about sales, revenue, profit margin, costs, customer satisfaction, at the very least. Nicely done. Second question. We'll get to less back pain in a minute. Second question. What behaviors might you observe in your store that would lead to some of those metrics, right? What behaviors could you observe people doing in your store that might lead to sales, revenue, profit, reduced costs, customer satisfaction? What are people doing in the store? There we go. Number of customers per day, trying out the product. Yes, and Margot clarifies that as lying on the mattresses. Exactly right. Time spent in the store until buying a mattress, asking questions. Yeah, experiencing the product in more than one product, looking for a salesperson, talking to a salesperson. Exactly. Talking. Very good. We want, and then somebody in the first question said footfall, right? We actually want people coming to the store as well, which is very important. Online visitors is interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll ask you one clarifying question. When it comes to buying mattresses, if you've ever bought a mattress and you sleep next to someone on a regular basis, right? You have a partner. Are you buying that mattress by yourself? The answer is no. You're not. Exactly. Not only should it be together, it kind of has to be. I guarantee you, and trust me from experience, you don't buy these by yourself. You bring your partner in. Exactly right. Right. So people coming to the store with a partner, lying on a mattress, lying on multiple mattresses, asking questions, right? And then talking to salespeople, and then ultimately buying a mattress. Excellent. Last question about the mattress store. Okay. What could you do to the store to drive those behaviors that we just talked about? Coming to the store with a partner, lying on mattresses, talking to salespeople. What could you do to the store to drive those behaviors, right? Yeah, make it a family store with a play corner. I love that. Bring the kids, right? Make them feel as if they're at home. Yeah, design a nice vibe to the store. Yes, exactly. Advertisements, a sign on the mattress to test me. Yeah, absolutely. Make it cheaper, reduce your prices. Absolutely. Have events targeted at couples at the store. I like it. Speed dating at the mattress store. That's good. Organize the store according to specialty. Friendly salespeople. Double door. Sleep at the store. I love it. Try it out, right? All this stuff is amazing. Look, there's hints in the picture too, right? You want people to lie down on a mattress, but they don't want to take their shoes off, but they don't want to put their dirty shoes on a new mattress, right? Because they're good people. And so, we put covers, like pillow covers. Yeah, shoe racks. I love it, right? Or covers or pillow covers, etc. All this stuff. Excellent. Very, very good. Um, let's look at all those three questions really quick. Yeah, yeah. Put pets on the mattresses. Yeah, that'll get people there for sure. Look, everything that you could do to your store, those are the features of your store, right? That's your output, right? Sales, advertisement, friendly salespeople, pricing, inventory, design, layout, atmosphere, um, shoe racks and covers and all this kind of stuff. All of that stuff, those are the features of your store. All of those things are designed to drive specific behaviors in the store. And we identified those behaviors. Come to the store with a partner, lie on mattresses, talk to salespeople, ask questions, buy a mattress, right? Why? Because those are leading indicators of profit, sales, revenue, and customer satisfaction. Now, outcomes. The key results we're looking for are the behaviors in the store. All of those features of the store are designed to drive those key results, those outcomes. If they don't work, we have to change them. The measure of success for our shoe store isn't shoe covers or shoe racks or pets or a play corner. Those are great ideas, right? But if they don't drive the behavior that we care about, then those ideas didn't work. And we have to change. We have to pivot off of those ideas to a different set of ideas that hopefully drive the behavior that we're looking for, right? Because our measure of success isn't shoe rack, it's people coming to the store and lying on a mattress, because that functions as a leading indicator to the health of the business. And that's the thing I want you to take away. If you take away anything from this webinar, is that the products and services, the output that we make today, those are the variables now. Because we can update and learn and optimize and improve and sense and respond and build and measure and learn so much faster today, the products and services that we produce are the variable, right? We can adjust those as quickly as possible to build things that actually deliver value to customers and value to the business, right? So if we think about good OKRs for the mattress store, right? I want to become the #1 seller of mattresses in the Metro Barcelona area by the end of the year. How do I know? Because 150% increase in foot traffic to the physical store, 50% increase in folks going from online to offline, coming to the store, and a third of my foot traffic comes in with their partner, right? And we could adjust these, and these are all our best guesses and our assumptions. But the point is that we want people coming to the store more with their partners and converting from online to offline so they can come try mattresses. And because of that, we think we're going to sell more mattresses and become the best-selling store in the city. That's our goal, right? And we have to figure out which of those features do that. Look, I did this exercise years ago with some Norwegian design students. And they said, look, what we would do is we would take all the mattress information and we would put it on the ceiling above every mattress. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, right? If you want to read about the mattress, you have to lie down on the mattress. Okay. That's a great idea if it gets people to lie down on the mattress, right? If it gets people to walk around the store and ask, hey, I need some info on the mattress. Hey, I need some info on the mattress, because they never look up, then it didn't work, no matter how much we love the idea, right? Let me show you an example from the real world. Okay. This is from an organization called the Cleveland Clinic. Okay. The Cleveland Clinic is a global healthcare organization based in the United States in Cleveland, Ohio, perhaps not a surprise. And they've been using OKRs forever. These are the CEO's OKRs, and they are published publicly on their website every year. You can go read every year's website. I like all of these, but there are two that I really like here. And the first one is this one: the best place to receive care anywhere, right? Qualitative, inspirational, aspirational, clear customer benefit, and a time box. These are annual goals. How do we know, right? What will people be doing differently? The absolute number of serious safety events goes down to 72, and the rate at which those serious safety events take place goes down to 0.27%. Okay. How do we do that? The team has to go figure that out, right? The right policies, incentives, equipment, training. I don't know, right? They have to go figure that out. The other one I really like on this list is this one. This one says best place to work in healthcare. This is an internally facing objective, right? I need you, the team, to create the best place to work in healthcare. Again, inspirational, aspirational, qualitative, future benefit, right? The future benefit, the customer in this case is hospital staff and prospective hospital staff, right? How do we know? What will people be doing differently? Well, 85% recommended as a place to work, and we only have an 8.6% regrettable turnover rate. Regrettable turnover is people resigning voluntarily, right? People that we don't want to quit, they end up quitting. Again, the team has to go figure out how to do this, but the focus here is on the human or the customer with these objectives and key results. These are really great, right? Now, look, there are lots of benefits to using OKRs. These are at least three that I think are critical to switching to this way of setting goals. Because we don't tell our teams what to do, we are demanding that our teams go out into the world and do discovery work, right? Discovery work is the work, the research, the experimentation, the design thinking, the lean startup work, whatever you want to call it, right? That customer interviewing, et cetera, customer development, that helps us determine which solutions are most likely to succeed. That's number one. When we do that work, we get closer to the customer. So we're building a customer-centric culture. We are building more empathy for our customers, and they figure into everything that we're doing at work. And then ultimately, we're increasing the agility of our organization. Why? Because as we start to work towards a specific product or feature, if building that thing isn't changing behavior in the way that we determined was our definition of success in our key results, we now have evidence to justify changing course. Changing course based on evidence is agility. It is being agile, lowercase a, right? It's the ability to respond to new information and new data as we move forward, right? And so this is critical to the success of every organization, and setting goals in this way allows us to build this part of the conversation into all of our work. It allows us to build evidence into all of our decisions, right? We're not just making decisions because someone likes it this way, or they saw it on a competitor's website, right? We're building it because we have evidence to justify that doing it this way drives the behavior that we're looking for. And that's the benefit of customer-centric OKRs, and just making sure that we're always serving the humans that consume the things that we do. And so with that, I want to say thank you so much for having me. Thanks for listening. I'm more than happy to take all of your questions. I hope you get a copy of our book, and I hope that if you already have a copy of our book, you'll write us a really nice review on Amazon as well. Also, that's my email address on the screen there, jeff@senseandrespond.co. If you don't get your question answered today and you want to ask it privately, just send me an email. I'd be more than happy to hear from you. Okay. Questions? Thoughts? Feedback?
Yeah, I've got my personal question. So what we really struggle in our marketing team with our OKRs is to have balance with OKRs and the operational work that we still need to do. And with our estimations, we are always very optimistic, and I would say, yeah, we are overly optimistic about the stuff we do. Maybe you can suggest something for us, how to do these estimations.
I mean, look, you're using the right word. The right word is estimations, right? And what is an estimate? Let's be very clear. An estimate is a guess, right? And humans are notoriously bad at guessing, but that's okay. We have to make a guess. And so we're going to make a guess or an estimate based on what we know today, and perhaps what we aspire to achieve. And that's fine. I think that's perfectly okay. What isn't fine is then just closing your eyes and hoping that you hit that estimate, right? If you make an estimate or a guess about what your key results should be, and you start to work towards that estimate, and you spend 3 months, a quarter, trying to make progress towards that, you should start to get a clear sense of how realistic that estimate is. Now, if you're making good progress towards that estimate, terrific. Keep the estimate. But if you find that your estimate was overly ambitious, okay, you need to have a real conversation with your team. Hey, we set a customer retention rate of 80%, and we've been working on this for the last 3 months. We're getting into the mid 40s, 45, 50. I think the most we could probably get is 60 or 65. Okay. And here is the evidence to justify that, right? It's not like you're saying, I don't want to do the work anymore, right? Or I don't like this, or this is bad. You're saying, look, we've been doing the work, and all the evidence points to a maximum retention rate of maybe 60 or 65%. And I think we should reduce it, right? Because your OKRs are estimates. They're guesses. They are assumptions. These are all words that mean the same thing. And so as you begin to work towards those OKRs, how realistic those OKRs are becomes evident. And if they're not realistic, you should change them, because if you don't change them, your team knows that they're chasing a target they're never going to hit. And that's depressing, right? And the team is just going to give up at some point around that. And so the way to do this is to build in regular checkpoints, at the very least quarterly, ideally monthly, with your stakeholders, and to talk about your progress, right? Here's how we're progressing. Here's what we've built. Here's what we've learned. Here's what we plan on doing next. Okay. And so that when you get to that first quarter, you get done with that first quarter of work and you're meeting with your stakeholders, no one is surprised by your progress, right? They're saying, okay, I know that you've been struggling to get enough traction on this. Let's see if we can adjust the goals. Or maybe it's the wrong goal. Maybe we should chase something else. And so I think it's crucial that you continue to use that word estimation, right? Or guess or assumption, because it's true. It's what it is. And then to build evidence into regular conversations that talks about the progress that you're making or not.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff, for sharing your insights. I've got more questions in the chat. Let's jump to them so that we can cover them. So the next question is, what's your view on using conversion rate, often fluctuating because of external factors, as a metric for OKRs? So there is no specific about which exactly conversion rate. Maybe Mark, you can voice it over. So is it website conversion rate or some other conversion rate?
Is this question in the chat? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, so
conversion
there was
rate.
a
Oh, I
question from
see.
Mark. Yeah.
Oh, I see it. Yeah. What's your view on using conversion rate as a metric for OKRs? Look, I think conversion rate is a nice, it's a measure of customer behavior, right? I think it's a fairly high level measure of customer behavior. And what I would want to at least see is a breakdown of the leading indicators for that conversion rate. So what I mean by that is, what happens before someone converts, right? What are the behaviors that lead to conversion? And also, what are the behaviors that lead to somebody not converting, right? So you think, like, I'll make something up, right? They come to the website, okay? They spend some amount of time on the website. They fill out a form to learn more. We set up a phone call and they accept the phone call. They show up for the phone call, right? Like, we're looking for, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, we're breaking down the process that happens before conversion. So I think conversion rate is fine as a key result, but I would also look at all the leading indicators, because especially if your conversion rate isn't great, you're going to want to look at the customer journey that happens before that and see where you might want to optimize things. Like, people are coming to the website, but no one fills out the contact form. Okay, why is that? People come to the website, they fill out the contact form, but they never respond to our emails, or they never set up a phone call, or they never show up for the phone. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, we want to identify all the steps in that customer journey and then begin to figure out how to best optimize towards increasing that conversion rate.
Okay, Mark, I hope that helps. Another question from Sumia. Jeff, please suggest ideas to make the results outcome focused and not output focused.
Yeah.
I guess it's the biggest struggle of every person who's making their own OKRs.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to my life for the last 20 years. No, really, I'm not even joking. I mean, seriously, look, we're battling. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what they teach in MBA programs today. I hope it's different, but we're battling 100 years of historical inertia, right? Of manufacturing theory as the fundamental driving theory for leaders and managers, right? Make more stuff, reduce the cost of making stuff, and drive up profits. And that makes sense when you're making physical goods like this one. It doesn't make sense when you're making software, right? It doesn't make sense when you're making policies or campaigns, right? We're looking to produce the most efficient services and the most efficient output to drive maximum behavior. And so it's easy for people to fall back on output as a measure of success. And so here's how I do it. Here's how I do it. First and foremost, when someone comes to a team and says, build me an iPhone app, I would say, okay, terrific. We'll do it, boss. Just out of curiosity, once we ship the app, and remember, I'm not saying if, right? When we ship the app, what will people be doing differently? What do we expect people to be doing differently? And they may not know the answer, and you may try to help them to get the answer. And maybe we add those metrics to the conversation, but we don't hold ourselves accountable to those metrics just yet. We say, okay, great. We expect people to download it and to set up an account and to spend at least 30% of the money they spend with us through the mobile channel. Okay, great. So we build the app and we ship it, and then we start to see how people are using it. And then we can go back to our boss and say, you remember 6 months ago when we talked about the iPhone app, right? These were our goals, and it's not happening right now. And so maybe we can start to figure out how to adjust towards these goals. So at the very least, you're building outcomes into the conversation. That's one way to do it. Another way that we do it is that exact conversation that I just had about the conversion rate, right? Is we sit down with our stakeholder and we say, look, okay, what's the thing you care about the most? And they'll say revenue, because they always say revenue, right? And you say, great, let's talk about what leads to revenue. And you walk them through that process that I just did on conversion rate. What happens before revenue? People buy a mattress. Okay, what happens before that? They come to the store with their partner and they ask questions and they lie down on mattresses and they do this, right? What happens before that? They look at our website. Okay. What happens before that? They search on Google. Okay, great. Now we've got all those pieces. We are okay, so now you've got all the pieces of the customer journey, right? Now our department is in charge of, the digital service. So we can optimize search engine optimization, the website, and conversion from website to site to store visits. So let's focus on those three behaviors. Okay, boss. In other words, you start to break down the actual customer behaviors that drive the business results that they're looking for. At that point, they may say, okay, great. What are you going to do to drive more website visits? And you say, well, here's some hypotheses that we have, right? How much increase in website visits do you think makes sense for us to try to target? And so what you're doing is you're essentially using a Trojan horse to inject outcomes into these conversations ultimately, and try to connect this into that world for people. It's not easy, and it's particularly difficult if the organization rewards the production of output. I will share one other tip that I've used for years. It's a really easy idea. It's a really simple idea, maybe not so easy to implement. But one really interesting way to think about this is, can you just change the name of the team, right? Think about it. Right? If you're on a team and the name of that team is the iPhone app team, right? Your team has one job, right? Make the iPhone app, period, end of story, right? What if you take the same exact people, the same exact team, and you rename it the mobile commerce team, right? All of a sudden, your mandate is much broader. Your mandate isn't iPhone app. Your mandate is get more people spending money through the mobile channel, which is an outcome, right? And so all of a sudden, your world opens up. The possibilities of what you might make inside that world opens up. That's a little trick, just changing the name of the team from a product to an outcome. That's a lot of stuff. Long answer.
Jeff, I thank you so much. I hope we've answered the question. I've got a question from Timo. Jeff, do you have any ideas or concrete examples of integrated externally framed estimations into your own internal estimations? For example, using estimates from others who've done something similar already. So I guess this is when you have kind of sort of learning OKR, you've never done this before, and you don't have like previous metrics to base it on, and you need to come up with something you can quantify.
It's a great question. Look, I think most markets, most industries have industry standards or industry standard rates, and there's market research that's been done to say, on average, we see, X%. I keep using iPhones because it's easy, but we see X% of iPhone customers upgrade to a new iPhone every 3 years, something like that, right? I think there's industry metrics, and I think you can start to use those, right? But again, coming back to your very first question, use those industry standards and that industry research as a starting point, but don't commit to it simply because it's an industry standard, right? I suspect you've got bigger aspirations than the industry standard, number one. And number two, maybe it doesn't make sense in your application and in whatever it is that you're making. And so use that as a guide, start there, work for 3 months or 6 months, see how you're trending against the industry standard, and then decide what to do from there. Just as a quick example, I have a content marketing team that I work with. They use my content and they repurpose it for LinkedIn and a bunch of other things, right? The benchmark that they use is an industry standard set of LinkedIn engagement metrics. And they compare the work that we do together against that. And then we set targets based on the variance and how we've been doing. And we change our tactics based on that as well. So to me, that feels like a nice place to start, but it's just that. It's a place to start. It's not a place to commit to blindly. You've got to keep doing those check-ins, those retros that we talked about before.
Can I clarify a little bit what I meant with the question? Because you hit on something that's really great. What I meant with the question was something a little bit different. Was just so what you're talking about is more, this is what we want to happen from customer behavior, and that's the metric that we're tracking. What I was thinking of more is sort of inside of your team. If you're creating OKRs inside of your team, maybe I don't understand OKRs that well because I've never worked with them. But like, let's say we need to create an iPhone app, but we've never done it before. And we go and look at other teams in similar industries and say, okay, they've taken 6 months to create one. But our team thinks we can do it in 3. How do you integrate sort of what exists as, knowledge generally or expectations generally for a team like us? And then how do we integrate that with, well, here's what we think we can do? That's kind of where I was going with it.
That's super interesting. But here's the thing, right? To me, so and we're running out of time here, so I'll try to answer quickly. If you're going to use OKRs in that way to measure the performance of your team, it becomes tricky, right? It becomes tricky and it becomes dangerous for you, right? Because, for example, you could set an objective that says we want to become the most efficient iPhone app team in the furniture industry, right? Whatever it is. And then your key results are, on average, we can produce, we generate our updates every 2 weeks, and we launch a new app at least 4 times a year. Whatever it is, what you're doing there is you're signing yourself up for tasks, which aren't actual key results, right? It's output at that point. You're like, oh, we've got to ship an app every quarter. We got to ship an update every 2 weeks, right? You're checking off this task list. And so it becomes really tricky to write an OKR in that way. If you're looking to, there are ways to write OKRs that are internally facing, that measure the quality, which is a crap word, but the quality of a team or the quality of the work of a team. But you want to move away from the measuring the team in terms of production metrics, in my opinion, because I think if you do that, you're just kind of signing back up to fixed time, fixed scope deliverables. And all we've done is change the name on the door and nothing else. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Timo. Guys, I will jump for 1 minute to share a couple of details about us as organizers. And I'm not sure, Jeff, think if maybe you can stay for 10 more minutes to handle a couple of more questions. Just let us know.
Sure, I can stay for 10 more minutes. That sounds fine.
Okay, that is awesome, guys. So what I want to share is a couple of words about Oboard as a company who's organizing this webinar today. We're creating Oboard OKR software. We work in the market for 7 years in more than 100 countries with more than 3,000 customers. The framework is very important, but it's also important that you can have the right tool. And our tool is used by big companies like Panasonic. It's used by gaming development studios like CD Projekt Red. It's very widely used. It's also one of the things we're proud of. If you go to the Atlassian Marketplace, it's where we came from, where our first OKR app was created. We would be #1 app on that marketplace. This is something our marketing team is very proud of. And basically, what we do, we automate the work and connect it to the key results. This works perfectly well for output key results. For outcome-based key results, you can do it manually. And with our tool, you can brainstorm your OKRs on a strategy map. You can do the roadmap planning and connect it to the tasks. You can work with it like a smart table, update it for your check-ins, to add some comments, to update the numbers, and build reports. So we're very short of time. I won't dive into the specifics, but this is just a couple of words about organizers from me. And if you would like to learn more, I'll send a link into a chat, and please reach out to me. Yep, getting back to you.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks to Oboard for setting this up. This has been fun, and the questions are really good. So I appreciate that. I'm happy to hang around for 9 more minutes.
Okay.
I've got another call at the bottom of the hour. So who's next?
I believe it's me. Jeff already kind of touched base with what I was about to ask. I believe you mentioned at some point in the book that for company OKR, the key results should not, or you advise not to be directly related to revenue itself.
Yeah.
Which is something that I often see in a lot of companies. Would you be able to expand a little bit on that? Because for the team, it makes total sense that it's not directly, it's behaviors, right? But for the company, it was not that straightforward, but it makes total sense.
I mean, look, so revenue has many leading indicators in an organization. And so at the senior leadership level, sure, you can have revenue as a target. But what if I work on the authentication piece of our service? We're a bank, let's say, right? And there's a revenue goal for the bank, and that's great. I'm the product manager for authentication, right? Am I signing up for a revenue goal, right? I shouldn't, right? Because right? What I try to do is I try to make sure that people can authenticate securely and safely and consistently into the banking system, right? And then because they can do that, well, they can transact and they can, use more products and deposit more money, take out money, transfer money, whatever it is. But I have no control over the rest of that, right? My world, my sphere of influence is authentication. And so if my boss gives me a revenue goal, I'm screwed, right? Because I literally have no impact on it. I may have an impact on cost a little bit, right? Like I can help reduce customer support costs to some extent, maybe, right? But realistically, I only control the authentication piece of the workflow. And so it doesn't make sense to give everybody a revenue goal. It's a shortcut and it's an anti-pattern, and we've seen it, but it's not fair, number one. And because it's not fair, and I don't mean to make it sound like I'm whining about it. It's not fair. And so teams are going to be like, well, I can't impact this in any meaningful way. So I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. I won't try too hard because no matter what I do, it doesn't matter whether we get the goal or whether we hit the goal or not. And so people just don't put in the level of creativity or innovation that would help move the organization forward. And so that's again, it's having that conversation about the leading indicators to revenue, and then look from the authentication side of the team. I can tell a good story. Here's why I need authentication specific goals, right? Because when people authenticate successfully and without any issues, right, then they get into the site faster. And then they use more products and they complain less and they stay customers longer and it costs us less and all of those things, right? And so this is why we've chosen these goals, because A, they're leading indicators for these other success criteria, and B, we can control those. And I think that that's the important part, is to be able to tell that compelling story that says, I can control this part of the customer experience, right? And that's where this breaks down if you give everybody revenue goals.
Thanks. That's exactly what I feel whenever a company sets a revenue goal. Is teams struggle to trickle down the OKRs to build their own OKRs, and usually they end up doing like what you mentioned. I'll do something, and it will ultimately somehow contribute to the revenue, but that's not actually OKRs, right? Thanks
Yeah.
for that.
I
Thank you very much.
probably have my microphone back. Is it better? Can I just go ahead?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, perfect, super. I was saying thank you, Jeff, for the session, and it was really great. I think you personally, touched the core philosophy of OKRs. I actually read the book a while ago, Measure What Matters by John Doerr, and was so inspired. And I went into my company as part of my role, product manager, tried to set up the OKRs in the team. So I work in a digital business team, right? So we have a digital product, IoT product. What I wanted to mention here was that we set up the OKRs, objectives and key results, and in the beginning, try to set the outcome-based key results. But our company, like many companies, is a pretty decently big company. So we are dependent on so many other teams, finance teams, sales teams, pre-sales teams, marketing teams, every other team to make our product. In this case, it was a digital product, an IoT product, which also had a hardware component, right? So it's also supply chain involved, who manages the inventory, forecasting, et cetera, et cetera. So there was the product being what it was. There were a lot of dependencies on other teams. So the OKRs that we set up, which were outcome-based in the beginning, ended up being so much dependent on different other teams. And the company doesn't follow OKRs at all, except for our team, which I kind of got really inspired by that book and introduced into our team, and everybody in the team loved it. So we started to get going with this OKR setup, but no one in the company uses OKR. No other teams uses it, and they don't care about what key results or objectives we have as our team, even though it was customer focused, right? Because they are measured on their own metrics and sales and et cetera, et cetera. So it was almost impossible to get that outcome to fruition or achieve that, even measure that, because we kind of couldn't get our product going forward without the other teams' involvement or investment in the OKRs also. So we unfortunately ended up moving to an output-based because outcome-based was so much dependency on different other teams. So we said, all right, what the best we could do in this case was we probably would measure ourselves, our team's
I'm
output.
so sorry, but I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but Jeff is leaving in 1 minute.
Yeah.
I'm afraid
That's
that he
all.
won't have any time to answer you.
Okay, but that's all I want to say. So we measured from or moved from outcome to output due to that reason. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if you have time.
So look, it's difficult. It's difficult in a large organization to prove this. And so you have a couple of choices, right? If you can't win them over to your side to try to do OKRs, you should then try to prove the value of OKRs, right? And with so many dependencies, my questions would be, is there a way to localize some OKRs strictly to the work that your team is doing? That's one thing to look at. If there isn't, can you take 1 or 2 adjacent teams and have them kind of play along with you for 3 months, say for a quarter? Let's all share an OKR and work towards that to see how that works. It's low risk. It's not a lot of people. And if it works well, you've collected evidence that justifies scaling the model further. And if none of that works, I would say, look, I really would like us to shift this way. Can you run a pilot project within your team or your organization to prove the value of OKRs and say, look, in our little world, this works really well. If we had 2 or 3 more teams, just think of the efficiency that we could start to build into this process and maybe use that evidence to justify scaling it a bit more and a bit more. The way that we've successfully done this in large interdependent organizations is exactly that way, is to build a pilot project, to demonstrate the value, to collect the evidence, and then use that evidence to justify scaling the process a bit more. So hopefully that works well. If you want to email me, I'm happy to chat a bit more as well.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you. Jeff, I know that it's 10 minutes, but we've got an excellent question. Can it be the last one, please?
Sure.
Yeah, so it's a question from Tim Elaine. He's asking, like, understanding that our key results have to be outcome-based, are there scenarios when there are output-based key results preferred or necessary? And what are the examples?
Yeah, I wish Josh was here. Josh has a strong opinion on this. The short answer is this: if you have a very clear thing you need to build, it is very low risk. You know exactly what you need to build. You know how to build it. You're very confident in how people will use it. It's the value is clear. The problem that you're solving is clear. In other words, there's very little risk and very high certainty. In that case, just going forward and building the thing makes sense. I'll give you an example. I did some work with a British newspaper many years ago, and it was an internal system for publishing articles, right? It was their content management system. And they had a meta tagging challenge for the content. They knew exactly what it needed to do, how it needed to do it, what it should look like, where it fit in the UI, like the whole thing. In that situation, it was high certainty, low risk. Output was fine. Just go ahead and build it, and it makes sense. And so in that situation, that's where this makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. I'm sorry, not all questions are answered, but please reach out to Jeff. We will send a follow-up email with the recording, and we'll share Jeff's email there as well, so that you can reach out after the meeting. And yeah, thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much, Jeff, for being here with us and sharing your expertise.
My pleasure. Nice to see everybody. Thank you for having me.
Okay, then thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and see you in our next meetings. Goodbye.